3 months in, that's where we are with 2026. And if you've been watching these market updates since January, you've now got enough data to actually see whether the predictions I made at the start of this year are holding up, or whether the market went somewhere I did not expect. Today we're breaking down the March numbers for Suffolk and Nassau, and for the first time this year we have a full quarter of data to work with. Inventory's ticking up, days on market moved, and Nassau's average sold price came down slightly from February. So we're going to talk about what all that actually means, because some of these numbers look different than they are if you don't have the context. We've also got some things happening around Long Island worth talking about, including a former Cy Young winner who just showed up in Central Islip. The Smith Point Bridge replacement is finally getting underway, and a professional wrestling event coming to Greenport on May 2nd that I'm personally sponsoring. There's also a very loud argument happening nationally right now about whether sellers are better off keeping their homes off the MLS or on. The CEO of Compass is pushing hard on this. I have thoughts. Let's get into it. Roll the spray paint. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Long Island Real Estate with me, Sal Catalano, where we break down what's actually happening in the Long Island housing market. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or just trying to make sense of the headlines, this is where the actual data lives. So here's the thing about today's episode. It's April, which means we just closed out the first quarter of 2026. And this is the first time I've been able to look at 3 consecutive months of data and actually compare it to what I said I expected to see this year back in my boring 2026 market prediction video. My main thesis was pretty simple. Long Island was not going to crash. It was not going to explode. What I expected was a supply-constrained market doing what supply-constrained markets do, which is grind upward steadily while inventory stays well below what would be needed to shift pricing power towards buyers. So today, with a full quarter in the books, let's see where things actually landed, starting with Suffolk County. The average sold price in Suffolk County for March came in at $685,000. That's only up 1.5% from February, but it is still up. And if you look at the first quarter as a whole, we've had steady upward movement in Suffolk each month. It's not a coincidence. That's the pattern I expected. Now, the number that really stands out in Suffolk is this month is the sold to list ratio, which came in at 101.8%. which is also up 1.3 month over month. That, like I said, that number went up from February. So even as more listings are coming onto the market heading into spring, buyers in Suffolk are still competing harder, than they were last month. Homes are selling almost 2% above asking price on average. And that's a significant indicator of where the market actually is right now. So let's talk about inventory. Suffolk has a 2.52 month supply of inventory, which amazingly is up 5.4% from February, which does make sense because it's March. Spring listings are just starting to come out. That wouldn't have been in this data. But the reason why it's crazy is because the idea 2.52% month of inventory is extraordinarily low. A super constrained seller's market, which is where we've been. But, that just shows you where we were last month. And just shows you overall that we could go up 5.4% and still be at a incredibly low, inventory number. So the sellers who waited out the winter are starting to make their move. But here's the number that puts everything in perspective. Year over year, Suffolk inventory is down 22.9%. I kind of chuckled there because you have to laugh to stop from crying sometimes. So yes, inventory went up a little bit because it's spring and that's what it should be doing. But compared to where we were 12 months ago, there's still nearly a quarter fewer homes available on the market. The seasonal increase does not erase a 23% deficit. That gap is the reason prices are still moving up and competition is still real. Days on market came in at 45 days, up from 41 in February. Just like I touched on there, very expected. When more listings hit at the same time in March and April, individual homes naturally takes a few more days to find the buyer. A lot of this quarter was very much weather impacted. We had a lot of bad weather, blizzards. Not going to dive into it. We all know what we just went through. It's actually really nice out there right now. So let's all just move on. The moral is that's not a slowdown. That's inventory, arriving on the scene now when it should be and when it's expected to be. What matters more is that sold to list ratio, which tells you that once buyers find the right home, they're still competing really hard to get it. So let's take a look at Nassau. All right, heading west, Nassau has an interesting story this month, and I want to address it directly. The average sold price in Nassau came in at $839,000, which is actually down 1.3% from February. And if you only look at that number, it's easy to read it as the market softening, but that's not what's happening, and here's how I know. The sold to list price ratio in Nassau is 100.6%, and that number went up from last month. Homes are still selling above asking price, and competition at the offer stage actually increased. What you're seeing is the average sale price is a mixed effect. The homes that happen to close in March in Nassau skewed slightly smaller and less expensive than the ones that closed in February. That pulls the average down even when the underlying market is just as competitive. The sold to list ratio cuts through that noise because it tells what's actually happening when buyers and sellers are negotiating. And what's happening is buyers are still going over asking. Inventory in Nassau sits at 2.44 month supply, which same as Suffolk is incredibly low, but is actually up 3.4% from February. Again, normal spring movement, but year over year, less than Suffolk, but Nassau is down 9.6% in inventory. So way tighter than it was a year ago. Days on market held flat at 42 days. It's kind of notable. So Suffolk's days on market went up with the spring inventory increase. Nassau held steady. That tells you Nassau's demand is absorbing new inventory faster right now, which tracks with how consistently tight that market has been. The headline across both counties is the same. More homes are coming to the market. The market's absorbing them. Prices in Suffolk are up. Nassau had a slight average dip that the competition data doesn't really support as a trend. And homes across the island are still selling above asking. So pretty much exactly where you would expect to be heading into, the spring market, quarter two. All right, here's my honest read on the first quarter. My prediction was steady appreciation in a supply-constrained market. Through 3 months of data, that's exactly what we've got. Suffolk is up month over month every single month this year. Nassau has had 1 month of a slight average dip that I just explained, with competition actually getting stronger that same month. Inventory is growing because spring has arrived, not because something changed. The year-over-year inventory numbers are what matter, and if you're trying to understand the direction this market is actually moving, that's what you have to follow. Both counties are still well below where they were a year ago. If you're a seller who's been waiting, I want to be direct with you. The spring market is here now. By the time you're watching the video, we're in it. Inventory is growing, but it's still tight, super tight. Expect that trend to start going back down. Competition is still real, and buyers who have been patient all winter are ready to move. If you're a buyer, this is your best window for options. More homes are coming on, but waiting for prices to drop significantly because Nassau had 1 month where the average came down a little bit over 1% is not a strategy I would recommend. The fundamentals haven't shifted. A seller's market is still a seller's market, even when one of the big numbers shifts a little bit. All right, let's talk about what's happening around Long Island. So if you haven't heard this yet, former Cy Young Award winner Trevor Bauer just signed with the Long Island Ducks. He's set to start opening night on April 21st at Fairfield Properties Ballpark in Central Islip. He's going to be mic'd up for every game and every practice this season for social media content purposes. Now, I don't know if you don't follow baseball, but Bauer comes with a complicated backstory. He hasn't pitched in the United States since 2021, served a lengthy suspension after some allegations, but he was never charged with a crime. So, that is what it is. And he spent years pitching in Japan and Mexico, working towards a return. 2024, he was actually the Mexican Baseball Pitcher of the Year, which is awesome. Last year in Japan, he went 4-10. So I guess we'll see what happens. Because now he's in Central Islip with the Ducks. People are going to have their own feelings about that, and I totally respect that. What I will say is that for Long Island specifically, this puts the Ducks on a national stage that they haven't been on probably ever. And if you've ever been to a Ducks game, you know Fairfield Property Ballpark is genuinely a great night out. My family loves it. Good baseball and a good venue, a good atmosphere. If you want to see what it's all about, opening night's April 21st, and he's scheduled to be on the mound. This story is one that's going to matter a lot to people on the South Shore, particularly anyone who spends time in the Shirley and Mastic Beach area, or just heads out to use Smith Point County Park in the summer. The Smith Point Bridge is finally getting replaced. Something I've been hearing rumors about since I was a kid. This is the bridge built in 1959 that connects Shirley to Smith Point County Park and the eastern end of Fire Island. If you drove out there last fall, you probably noticed it was down to one lane with traffic signals after a routine state inspection found structural deterioration serious enough to immediately post a 3-ton weight limit. The county has been working on a replacement plan for years, like I said, and new construction is finally getting underway. The new bridge is going to be an arch design, which means it won't need to open for boat traffic the way the current drawbridge does. It'll have 55-foot vertical clearance, multi-purpose pedestrian and bike path, an overlook, new recreational courts, bathrooms for the park, and a 300-foot fishing pier underneath the bridge. All that sounds awesome. The current bridge will stay in service during the construction, as long as it stays up, so access to the park is maintained. Now here's why this matters beyond just getting to the beach. Infrastructure investment like this has a real effect on surrounding property values. When a community gets safer access, improved amenities, and meaningful public investment, it signals stability and long-term desirability to buyers. So if you own property in Shirley, Mastic, or Mastic Beach area, or have been paying attention to the Mastic Beach Revitalization Project, you see that this is meaningful news for you. And now for something completely different. Championship Entertainment Productions is bringing Lucha Rumble 6 to the Greenport American Legion on May 2nd, and I am a sponsor of this event. This is a family-friendly professional wrestling show with a legitimately stacked card. NWA World Heavyweight Championship is on the line. Thrillbilly Silas Mason defending against CEP's own Alvin Alvarez. A ladder match to crown the CEP Tag Team Champions. An I Quit match between ATL and Damon Knight for the Forever 5 Championship that's been building for a year. And a debut match from Little Lucha. So if you have kids, I have 2 boys who would lose their minds at this, but this is past their bedtime. This is a great night out on North Fork. Events are on Eventbrite, or you can go to cepprowrestling.com. I just love pro wrestling. I'm filming this during WrestleMania week. I'm super pumped about it. Hope I see you there. This month for national headlines, I want to point you to a separate video I made, because this topic deserved more than just a segment. But here's the short version. Compass CEO Rob Redfin Rob Refkin has been making a very loud public case that sellers are better off listing their home privately inside Compass's own network before those homes ever hit the MLS. He frames it as seller choice and seller empowerment. I frame it a little differently. Zillow published a study covering 10 million transactions and found that sellers who listed off the MLS left more than $1 billion on the table collectively in 2023 and 2024 combined. The typical loss was nearly $5,000 per home. In New York specifically, the average loss was 3.7%. In Nassau County prices right now, that's roughly $30,000. At Suffolk County prices, $12,000 to $15,000 per transaction. And the brokerages pushing private listings, the hardest are the ones who benefit the most when buyers and sellers both come from inside their own network because they collect both sides of the commission. And that's the part that doesn't get said out loud, and I'm going to say it. I made a full video on this, like I said, with all the data. I really put a lot of effort into this and a full breakdown of what's actually going on from both sides. I do try and look at it from both sides. The link is in the description. If you're thinking about selling or you know somebody who is, watch that video before you have a conversation about how your home gets marketed. Because the way your agent answers this question of where your listing goes is one of the most consequential decisions of the entire sale. Give it a watch. So let's zoom out and look at what the first quarter actually told us. 3 months of data. Suffolk up every month. Nassau competitive every month with one average dip in March that the sold to list ratio immediately tells you not to panic about. Inventory growing seasonably, but still well below year ago levels in both counties. And homes across Long Island still selling above asking price. That's the first quarter. That is also, for the most part, exactly what I expected to see. Not chaos, not a correction, a supply-constrained market doing what supply-constrained markets do. The spring market's here now, which means the next couple of months of data are going to be the most telling of the year. More listings, more buyers, more transactions. We'll see whether demand continues to absorb this seasonal inventory increase or whether something shifts. I'll be watching and we'll break it all down next month. In the meantime, if you want a little something more casual between now and then, I've been putting out a series called Car Talk where I talk through real estate topics while driving around Long Island, going to a showing or going to a commute, going to the office, whatever it might be. Gas is crazy expensive, so haven't really been doing the car talks as much, but I will try and get one in there. I just, talk about whatever's on my mind. Those sound interesting, check them out. And if you're thinking of buying or selling on Long Island, reach out. If you're a homeowner who's curious what your home is worth in this market right now, there's a free home value estimate link in the description. I really appreciate you guys watching this. Please check out that video where I talk about private listings. I'm really curious what people think about that, and it's really something that I do actually feel pretty passionate about. First quarter's in the books. I will see you next month. Like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.